Hello guys, so here I'm back again with another Escalation Tier 10 video. This time I'm playing Capital Building. Let's show you my build real quick. I'm using 4 piece strikers, all pieces with echo, critical hit damage, and I'm using the backpack and the chest piece. For my gloves, I'm using Exodus gloves. They're pretty good for solo play. And chest knee pads with echo and almost got roll DPS stats. I'm also using double NK46, both weapons with echo, critical hit chance, and frenzy. That way I can deal with the variety pack debuff. I'm also using a quick step, reviver hive, decoy, and the gunner specialization. For my seasonal modifier, already have it maxed out, I'm using a mystical active modifier, munitions belt, contagion, and surge strike passive modifiers. And for my stats, here's a critical hit chance along with all of its sources, 186.3% critical hit damage, and a sum of 201.5% all weapon damage and LMG damage. So let's start with the mission. Now, before we start, just make sure that after you interact with the civilian, don't get too close to the C4 because it will insta-kill you. And once the door is open, we can start running. Once we are around the lock, we're gonna start diving 4 times in a row. That way we can evade the 3 instances. We're gonna evade one more time there before the mortar drops. That way we can evade the 3 different instances where we can get confused by one of those mortar shells that are dropping. So yeah, we're gonna start this encounter by running towards the left side, and I'm gonna be playing pretty aggressively this mission because the, enem- the amount of space that we have to maneuver around most of the mission is quite tight, and the only way we can keep the enemies in line is by having a ton of DPS essentially. So, I mean, it's not to say that you cannot complete this mission if your DPS is low enough, but this is a mission that benefits greatly from an increased DPS, not only on like the difficulty itself, but also the amount of enemies that you can kill throughout the mission, especially on the last encounter. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The position where I recommend fighting for this room is right in the middle, get on the top of this building, and that way we can get a pretty decent line of sight with all of the enemies. We can also cover our side so that we can see the enemies that are approaching from our flanks. So it's not that difficult to deal with those enemies as they're getting closer to us. We just gotta be careful with the enemies that we are suppressing throughout the encounter. And well, you already saw it by now, but there's also boss number 1 for this mission. But yeah, there's a ton of place where we can move towards this beginning encounter. That's why I like this center building right here. We don't have to worry too much about getting flanked and stuff. And the lines of sight are pretty decent. So with that, boss number 1 is dead. Now we'll try to grab as many LMG ammo drops as possible, and we'll rush towards the second room because the mortars are gonna they're gonna keep dropping no matter what we do in the mission. So let's just grab our loot, that LMG drop, and we can continue along with the mission. We're gonna start from the left door, and we're gonna rush the second room of with NPCs. So we'll open the door. We're gonna drop a decoy right over there to grab the attention of the enemies, and we'll take cover on this white box over here, and we're gonna blind fire the first enemy that's gonna be approaching us. Doesn't matter if it is a red or a yellow, usually the frenzy LMG should be more than enough to deal with those enemies. Now in this room there's also one yellow heavy LMG guy that we have to be aware of. Usually they like to stay on the upper floor, but this time they seem to have dropped down like almost as we started the encounter. Anyways, if that enemy is starting to shoot at you, you can move towards this piece of cover where I'm moving at right now. And that way we can get a pretty decent line of fire with that enemy. Now, just right ahead, you're gonna start seeing the enemy from the lower floor on the right where the arrow is pointing at. That's where that yellow LMG that I was talking about is sitting at. You can see he starts starting to flank me, and he's gonna pop out with his LMG to try to shoot at me. And he's gonna proc my Exodus Loves right over here. So, yeah, just be careful with that guy. He can either, like, the enemies can either flank you from the right side, or they can try shoot you from the lower floor in case you are high enough. But as I said, we have to play pretty aggressively to keep the enemies in line overall. So although it's not a mission that I think it's impossible to complete with low DPS, it will become a lot more difficult. It's going to take exponentially more time, and you're gonna get less enemy kills than if you were to use a more optimized DPS build. So not the best mission to farm exactly, but anyways. Right as we're opening up the gate, we're gonna find gear crate number 1 on the camp, the little building on the right. I forgot how it's called in English. You can find the cache over there. It's a True Sons cache, and we're gonna need a True Sons key to open it. We can open it right as we're waiting for the turret to destroy the entrance to the capital. And as we're entering, right as the third mortar drops, we are gonna dive so we don't get staggered by the mortar. Now, before we continue with the statuary hall, we're gonna move right towards the end of this little loop, and we're gonna find gear crate number 2. Then we can open the door and start dealing with the enemies inside of this room. There's 4 enemies in here. We're gonna deal with them pretty quickly. There shouldn't be too much issue killing them. I'll try to stay careful in cover so that I don't get shot by a ricocheting bullet. Yeah, ricochet is a little bit of a problem with those guys, especially if you're too close to them. And then we're gonna run towards that ammo crate because we're gonna need almost full LMG ammo for this encounter. So gonna empty out both of my LMGs. And right as I get both of the LMGs empty, I'm gonna grab the briefcase and I'm gonna drop the decoy right on the ground. Then gonna rush towards the upper floor, stay in this piece of cover, and that way I can start covering all of the spawn points of the enemies. Most of the enemies are gonna be spawning on the upper floor, on 2 of the doors, either the one on the back or the one close to us. But if we stay over here, you'll very rarely get enemies to spawn over here. Like, I decided to grab this run just because it's a great good example on how to deal with those beginning waves. And yes, you can already see by now this mission, even though it has some good strategies to deal with, I think this is a mission that's a little bit more reliant of both DPS and especially reaction times. Like the space where we're fighting is pretty tight, so we have to be pretty on point with everything in our performance, Lord, like our accuracy or how quick we can kill the enemies and stuff. But anyways, after we open this door on our right, we're gonna find gear crate number 3. And we continue along throughout the hallways. We are gonna get around 1 wave per each corner on the hallway. So we're gonna kill those beginning enemies from the beginning enemy wave. And we're gonna get a second enemy wave as we are killing the first one. If we're fast enough, we're able to hunker down on this piece of cover right here. But the enemies were a little bit too tough for me, so I had to wait a little bit further back on the hallway to be able to kill them. But anyways, there's gonna be one more enemy wave that's gonna be spawning right on the turn on that hallway. And then right as we're getting close to the doors, you're gonna find the last 2 enemies that we have to kill. The position is pretty decent to fight with the LMG guys. Now for this next room, the strategy that I'm gonna be using is pretty similar. It doesn't matter if I'm fighting rogues or not. So let me show you the strat real quick. We're gonna open the door and we're gonna run towards the middle of the room, right over here. Gonna drop a decoy right on the middle, and I'm gonna try to hold the doors that are on the upper floor. Now usually the enemies are pretty weak and you shouldn't have too much issue being able to plow throughout the enemy waves with your frenzy LMGs. But unfortunately, because these are rogue agents, they have a ton of health. So I had to rely on my backup position, which is to sit on the both of the corners of the room. In this case, I'm going to be running towards one of those corners, and from there I'm going to try to deal with the enemies that may be approaching us. Now, one of those rogue agents had all the variants of the turret, so I wasn't really able to run towards that corner of the room, but right as I killed them, the other rogue agent has some far easier skills to deal with, so the fight became pretty easy after that point. Also, Contagion is doing a ton of lifting in keeping my DPS as high as possible. I'm gonna blind fire the guy, and there you go. That's the rogue agent encounter for this room. But yeah, the idea is to just stay on this center part and just hold those doors. Like, try to hold them as much as you can, and if it's even possible, try to use your active modifier to just hold the position as long as possible. We cannot really camp the door on the right as we can usually do on heroic or even legendary. But anyways, now that's the 4 gear crate that I show you, and right as we're reaching the roof, we're gonna start reloading our frenzy LMG. We're gonna start dealing with the enemy that's on the tower over there. Gonna drop a decoy on the right side, and we're gonna be dealing with all of the enemy waves. Usually the beginning enemy waves is going to be composed of yellow enemies, so I'm gonna try to kill all of them. And if you see either a heavy LMG or the boss start climbing up the highest point on this combat arena, then that's the best time to shoot at their backpack. Now the boss is an RPG guy, and if you don't shoot their backpack, they gonna start harassing you with their rocket launcher. We don't want that, so shoot the backpack. And after you kill the boss, it's just a matter of staying over here in case you didn't got overrun by the enemies, and just start killing them all. And if for some reason you get overwhelmed by the enemies, I definitely got overwhelmed a few times while running this mission, we can run back towards the stairs where we came from, and that way we can deal with the enemies that may be approaching us, pretty similar to how you'll do on solo legendary as you're starting out, like learning the strategies and stuff. Obviously that's going to be a lot slower, so I prefer to just stay on that piece of cover where I was sitting at. And yeah, another example of why this mission is heavily reliant on DPS to try to get most of the strategies to work and keep a decent completion time for this mission. So while this scripted scene is going on, I'm gonna start deconstructing some of my stuff. Actually, that chest pick was actually pretty good, so yeah, I decided to keep it. It's pretty much god roll DPS stats, well, almost god roll with W rate. And the brand set was pretty decent too. So yeah. And I'm gonna get 18 prototype cores from that. And that was enough time to get the scripted scene to finish and be able to rappel down towards the final room of Capitol building. So we're gonna rappel down. And we're gonna continue along with the mission. Now, while I reach that final room, what I was mentioning about DPS, this is the room where you're gonna see most of your DPS decide how many enemies you're gonna be killing. Each of the AA towers that we're gonna be interacting on each corner of the room is going to have I don't want to say infinite enemy waves, but there's gonna be so many enemy waves that you won't be able to kill all of the enemies before the progress bar fills out for those the things that we have to interact with. So because of that, my strategy and to be able to make the best of our time with this mission is to just sit down and try to kill as many enemies as possible. They're gonna be spawning on that building from the back of the room, and they're gonna be coming from both stairs. There's one pair of stairs on each side of that building, and the idea is to pretty much just camp the enemies right as they're coming, right as they're spawning. That way we can keep the enemies in line, be able to make sure that the enemies don't flank us from our sides, in this case my left flank, and by also killing as many enemies as possible, we can get more opportunities to get prototype pieces from this mission. That's already one prototype drop right there. So that's what I'm saying. The higher your DPS, the more enemies you can kill. That's why I haven't even bothered telling you guys how many NPCs there's in this mission. It really varies a lot on like your DPS, what strategies you use, how good your DPS are, etc. I had some runs where I was able to get around 140 kills. This run in particular, I think I got 131. And yeah, that's gonna vary a lot. So just keep that in mind. Now, as you run out of ammo, luckily we have ammo boxes near where our objective is, so we can fill out our ammo, and it is advised to just run back towards our cover position and keep shooting at the enemies, even if we don't have frenzy active. And luckily both of the positions where you can hunker down are wide enough so that we can keep moving and keep our frenzy bar low. So it's a pretty chill mission overall. I mean, well, not a chill mission, but it's a pretty chill spot to stay in this mission, in this last encounter. Right as you feel the progress bar, all of the enemies are gonna prioritize running towards the other AA box. So this is the best time to shoot them in the back. And with that, we can continue along with the next objective. Now, to not waste that much time, we can use the ammo drops that are found throughout the combat arena, and right as we get close to the max amount of ammo, we can continue along with the objective. We're gonna drop a decoy right in front of us on the left side, and we're gonna start spawn killing the enemies. So yeah, this mission is essentially a little bit of a loot cave for prototype gear. I mean, it's not going to be an easy loot cave, but you can get a ton of pretty decent loot for how long the mission takes. Again, this is not like a Roosevelt where you can get like 120 kills on 15 minutes, but it's not a bad mission once your DPS is high enough, I think. So yeah, just sit here and deal with the enemies. It's also a pretty good mission to like test out your in-game knowledge, which like how to prioritize certain enemy archetypes. So if you get the heavy LMGs, it's highly advised that you shoot at their backpack before they drop down and get behind a piece of cover. For the grenadiers, you gotta be careful with their grenades, especially for the yellow ones, which can put you on fire. And we have to take care of our flanks, because enemies are gonna try to flank us from our, in this case, on both of our flanks, so be careful with that. And yeah, like, I had some of my heroic runs, not escalation, some of my heroic runs, my DPS has been high enough to be able to verify that the enemy waves in this mission are actually limited. Like, you don't get infinite amount of enemies. And yeah, like at least on heroic, you usually have enough time to just kill all the enemies and just wait for the bars to fill up. But on escalation, tier 10 especially, the HP bars are so high that you will very rarely get to see that. I didn't got to see that on any of my tier 10 escalation runs. Luckily, the bar has already filled out, so I'm gonna focus on killing the last enemies. Gonna be careful with this enemy that was about to flank me. And I'm gonna use my gunner LMG to not waste any more high quality ammo from the seasonal modifier. You very rarely get some of those enemies that won't try to drop down towards the combat arena. They can be pretty bit annoying. But anyways, from all those enemies that I was able to kill, I got around 4 prototype gear drops from, if I'm counting right. So yeah, just gonna grab that. And then for the boss fights, it's gonna be a little bit different. So the quicker you can kill the boss, the less enemy waves we can get. My advice, focus on killing the boss as soon as possible, because those enemy waves can be pretty annoying. And the boss is also a name heavy LMG. So here's my strategy. We're gonna count 2 seconds right as we see the boss, right as he starts running towards us, and we're gonna start shooting them on the backpack. Then we're gonna focus all of our fire on the boss, and we're gonna try to make sure that the enemies don't get too close to him, because one of those enemies can have the mutator that heals NPCs, and that would be pretty bad for us. Luckily, I managed to kill the boss pretty easily, so I just have to focus on one more enemy. There was a thunderstorm throughout the mission, so the enemy behavior changed up a little bit. If there's no thunderstorm, the enemies will stay on the back of this building, and the boss will be the only ones who will be pushing us. So we can keep a healthy distance to evade the scenario that I was talking about, where the mutator heals all of the boss armor. But the thunderstorm wasn't a good example to show that strategy. But still, my DPS was high enough so that it didn't even matter. And yeah, after that, we just have to run back towards the front of Capitol Building, and that's the mission right there. We're gonna make sure that if we are leveling up the augment for one of our weapons, we equip that gun before the ending animation. And there you go. That way, all the XP is going to go towards that gun. And with that, we finish up Capitol Building on Escalation Tier 10. So yeah, overall, like, not a difficult mission, but it's a little bit too reliant on DPS builds. Unlike having your stats all maxed out or optimized to get a decent completion time. Otherwise, I think this is a pretty slow mission for this weekly rotation. And yeah, so that's it for this mission. If you like the video, guys, you can like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. I read all of your comments. I'll be back on the next escalation video, which is going to be Viewpoint Museum. If I publish it first, I don't know what the targeted loot is for today. So anyways, see you guys on the next one. Have a great day. Bye bye.